Well, I've done it again, guys. I can't help myself. Over the past couple years, I have probably added more new stocks to my portfolio than maybe any other time in history. And I know right now we're going through a time where the economy is looking really bad. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there, and for very good reason. But I just see so many great deals in the stock market. I just can't help myself. At these prices, I feel the urge to be picking up more stocks. And this time, I went ahead and picked up some brand new shares of a stock that I've never owned before in my entire history of investing, and that is Intel stock, ticker symbol INTC, who has a fantastic dividend. And this is a stock that I've been watching for a very long time. I've always been interested in buying it, but I always felt that the valuation was just a little too rich, or I was invested in similar companies and just wasn't ready to pull the trigger on it. But right now, the stock has crashed and lost more than half of its entire value, and I think that the valuation is really cheap now. The dividend is amazing, and there's a lot of things to really like about Intel stock over the long term. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk about the reasons why it crashed, why I'm still optimistic about their future from here, and why I've decided to start buying this stock here this week, right now, immediately. Let's get into this video. What's up, everyone? My name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks. Let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and jump into all the reasons why I've decided to add this stock to my dividend portfolio. Okay, now, as most of you probably know, Intel is the world leader in CPU market share, basically the main processing chip that computers run on, in what is essentially a duopoly with AMD. Now, the problem is that AMD has been innovating at a crazy pace in recent years and have stolen a lot of market share along the way, causing Intel's overall CPU market share to drop from about 80% last year to around 70% this year. However, even here, Intel is still dominating at more than double the size of AMD. Another concern, though, is that on their market dominance for server CPUs, which has always been a massive cash cow for Intel, as they held almost 100% market share for many years, well, AMD has now released recently new EPYC server chips, and those have been very impressive, and they've started to steal market share from Intel once again. Thankfully for Intel, they still dominate at close to 90% of the market, but a recent delay in their new server chips, coupled with rising competition from AMD and even ARM-based chips like the new ones from NVIDIA, have put estimates for Intel's market share to drop even further to around 80%. Again, still extremely dominant, but obviously a valid reason for concern. And finally, on the GPU side of things, basically graphics chips, Intel actually holds the most market share there as well at 60%, even ahead of NVIDIA and AMD, just because of their integrated chips, not discrete, but integrated GPUs that benefit from being combined with their popular CPUs and then sold inside of many pre-assembled, like laptops and PCs. But even there, NVIDIA and AMD have been able to steal market share too because of new products being released, while Intel continues to struggle with massive delays and all sorts of production issues on many of their most important kind of newer products, much of which have taken place over the last couple years. These delays and production issues, with many outlets referring to this kind of period of time as the worst in Intel's entire history as a company. And the result of all that, coupled with a global chip shortage, supply chain issues from the pandemic, and a macroeconomy that is literally in recession, is now causing a very rare decline in sales expected this year of about 11%, an 11% drop for Intel, for what is normally a very strong, very financially stable and profitable company. However, as someone who has never owned this stock yet myself, I gotta say that all of these unfortunate events for Intel are one of the best things that could have ever happened for me as an investor, because I've been looking for an opportunity to buy Intel stock for many years. I always knew, though, that it would take a giant blow to the company, like something like this, for me to ever be able to buy such an amazing company on sale. And that I think that that's exactly what we're seeing here. I mean, we're talking about a stock now that has crashed from about $70 a share all the way down to just the low $30 range, losing more than half of its entire value. And at these levels, I believe that there is gigantic upside potential, and I'm going to explain exactly why right now. First of all, you're talking about a price now that is not only lower than the 2020, stock market crash, but that also carries a dirt cheap valuation that is more than 50% cheaper than the sector, despite their market dominance, and an absolute beast of a dividend that is yielding almost 4.7% with still a very low payout ratio. And they've even grown that dividend for, I believe, almost every single year that they've paid it. I think there was only one year where they actually kept it at the same amount. I think it was like 2012 or 2013, something like that. But every other year they've grown it, and they've never, to my knowledge, they've never cut that dividend either since they started paying it. But of course, you can't just buy stock for what the price is. You also need a plan for fixing some of their issues that caused it to drop in the first place. Well, thanks to Intel's market dominance, they not only generate more cash flow than their biggest rivals in AMD and Nvidia by more than 3 times the profits of Nvidia and 6 times that of AMD, but they also get to invest more money on research and development at more than 3 times the size of Nvidia and 5 times that of AMD, which they're using to not only innovate, but to also increase their already dominant manufacturing capacity that they actually own themselves rather than, sourcing it out to third parties like most of their competitors do. For example, when looking at innovation in 2017, they made a huge acquisition of the autonomous driving company Mobileye. And while that may be a very long-term bet on the future of autonomous driving and robotaxis and things like that, that in my opinion probably won't contribute much to Intel's bottom line for, I would say, like at least another 5 years or so. But that autonomous driving market, it's over the long term, I mean, it's eventually estimated to reach a gigantic size of literally trillions of dollars just by 2030 alone, growing at a rate of over 40% per year. Even if it was to reach like just half of that amount, it would still be a massive opportunity. And Mobileye themselves is already showing promise even in these early stages, as they grew their sales by essentially that same rate as the market last quarter to a record high in sales of over $400 million. Back to their bread and butter though, Intel has innovated on their cash cow CPUs as well by adopting a new hybrid architecture last year that focuses on increasing both performance and battery life, which they're updating this year with new Raptor Lake CPUs that is set to improve on that already stronger performance and is set to release probably sometime next month. On top of that, Intel is also finally going on the offensive against their rivals, which is evidenced by them re-entering the discrete GPU market after avoiding it for nearly a quarter of a century. And these new GPUs, these standalone discrete GPUs from Intel, have already managed to steal about 5% of the market after being literally zero just about a year ago. And then on the capacity and manufacturing side of things, well, Intel is making huge expansions both domestically and abroad with a nearly $50 billion expansion to their Arizona plants that includes a $30 billion partnership with giant infrastructure investment firm Brookfield Partners to help them build the new facilities and ensure that Intel retains enough cash to keep paying their dividend out to shareholders. There's also 2 brand new plants that are being built out in Ohio, all of which are going to be awarded subsidies by the United States government from the new CHIPS Act that just got signed by Congress to ensure that the US finally starts competing more aggressively with other countries around the world on the production of semiconductor chips, especially, against Asia and things like that. And that's huge news because rivals like AMD and Nvidia have their chips built by Taiwan. So if America wants to compete heavier on a global scale, then they absolutely need Intel to succeed as a company long term because they actually build their chips here in America. And I don't care what type of company you are, if you have the backing of the United States government, that's absolutely gigantic. You can't put a price on that. That is a giant deal that I think people are just not paying enough attention to. In fact, Intel has literally stated that with the new subsidies provided by the US government, they may even be able to quadruple the size of their Ohio site to a total of 8 different factories in what would likely be one of the absolute largest fabrication sites in the entire world. But it doesn't even stop here. Intel is even expanding abroad with new factories and R&D centers planned throughout Europe as well, who of course is also trying to compete, with Asian powerhouses. So when you add all of this up, I think you're talking about a market leader with over 80% CPU market share in desktop, close to 80% in mobile, and close to 90% in server, who is using their massive size and dominance to fix their issues and invest in long-term growth catalysts once again, with a new CEO that is determined to restructure the company while also implementing a strategic plan of innovation and new product releases through 2025 to gain back the crown of performance leadership against rising competition. And you're also talking about a stock that has fallen to the lowest levels in years, leaving a dirt cheap valuation and a dividend yield that is literally at the highest level that we have ever seen in the company's entire history. And I just think that for me, it is worth the gamble right here. And look, I know that there are diehard fans of AMD, there are diehard fans of Nvidia, and I'm a huge fan of those two companies and their stocks as well. AMD used to be like my second largest stock for a long time. I've made some of my biggest profit gains that I've ever made in the stock market on AMD stock. And Nvidia, I am still an investor in Nvidia, and I am a fanatical believer in Nvidia's long-term potential. But Intel right now at today's prices gives me something that neither AMD or Nvidia can give me at this time, and that is a dirt cheap valuation and a monstrous dividend. And while I acknowledge that there are still many concerns for Intel and lots of reasons to be cautious on the stock, I just think that the risk reward ratio is really good at these levels, and I think that they're going to benefit from American subsidies. I think they're going to remain a cash generating machine, and while I wait for their very longer term prospects to take shape, I get to collect that amazing dividend. And hopefully they don't end up cutting that dividend. I know they're going to be going through some difficult times right now, a little bit of a transitionary period for the company, so hopefully they don't cut it. I don't mind if they don't grow it. It's already at a very attractive yield. They don't have to grow it for me, but at least keep it at this yield. Please don't cut that dividend. As long as that happens, I'm feeling very good about this investment long term, and into the future I think that dividend will eventually grow as well. So I'm not too concerned about that either. But hey, look, these are just my thoughts, my opinions on Intel stock. I would love to hear what you guys have to say down below. Is this a stock that you guys have considered? Do any of you own it? Or do you think that there's better options out there? Maybe you like AMD and Nvidia instead, or maybe you just don't like Intel at all and you'd rather be in a different part, different sector in the market or whatever else. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Try to respond to as many comments as I can. Thank you so much for stopping by. Now we'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Hope you're all doing well. Bye-bye.